Rice looks almost too ordinary to be one of humanity's most important foods. It sits quietly in bowls, beside curries, under stir-fries, inside sushi, or at the center of simple family meals. But this small grain is the staple food for more than half of the world's population, especially across Asia and Africa. For billions of people, rice is not a side dish. It is the daily foundation of calories, culture, farming, and survival. In 2023, global production reached around 800 million tons, making rice one of the biggest crops on Earth. Its importance is not only measured in tonnage, but in dependence. When rice harvests are strong, families eat, markets stay calmer, and governments breathe easier. When rice harvests fail, the consequences can move quickly from farms to kitchens to politics. Rice is the seed of a grass, mainly the species Oryza sativa, known as Asian rice. A less common but historically important species, Oryza glaberrima, is African rice. These two forms tell us something important. Rice did not become a global food through one single invention. Asian rice was domesticated in China thousands of years ago, perhaps as far back as 13,500 years, while African rice was domesticated independently in West Africa around 3,000 years ago. Domestication was a long process of human selection. Farmers favored plants that produced more grain, were easier to harvest, and adapted well to local environments. Over generations, wild grasses became reliable crops. In that sense, every bowl of rice carries an ancient relationship between people, land, water, and patient agricultural experimentation. The spread of rice changed landscapes. Rice farming often depends on careful water control, so communities built paddies, terraces, canals, and irrigation systems around it. In many regions, rice was not just planted into an existing society, society organized itself around rice. Planting and harvesting required labor at the right moment. Water had to be shared, stored, and managed. Villages, seasonal rituals, and local economies grew around the crop's rhythm. This helps explain why rice became so deeply cultural. It appears in weddings, religious traditions, hospitality, and symbols of prosperity because it was never merely fuel. A food eaten every day for generations becomes part of identity. It marks celebrations, anchors family meals, and quietly defines what a proper meal feels like. Despite its massive global production, rice is not traded internationally as much as many people might expect. Only around 8% of rice enters global trade. Most rice is produced and consumed within the same country or region. This makes rice unusually local for such a globally important crop. China, India, and Indonesia are among the largest consumers, and their domestic supply matters enormously. If a major rice-producing country has a poor season or restricts exports, global prices can react sharply because the traded supply is relatively thin. For households that rely on rice every day, price changes are not abstract market news. They affect whether meals become smaller, whether families switch to cheaper foods, and whether household budgets become strained. Producing rice is only the first challenge. After harvest, the grain must be dried, transported, stored, milled, and eventually sold or cooked. In many developing countries, a substantial amount of rice is lost after harvest because roads are poor, storage is inadequate, grain is exposed to moisture, or pests damage it before it reaches consumers. These losses matter because they waste far more than food. They waste water, land, labor, fuel, and money. A farmer may grow a good crop and still lose income if storage fails. A country may produce enough on paper and still face shortages because too much disappears in the supply chain. Improving drying, storage, packaging, and transport can therefore be as important as increasing yields in the field. Rice fields are living systems, and that means farmers must constantly manage threats. Insects, rodents, birds, weeds, and diseases can all reduce yields. One especially damaging disease is rice blast, which can attack the plant and cut harvests severely. The simplest answer might seem to be more chemicals, but long-term rice farming often requires a more balanced approach. Traditional systems such as rice duck farming show this logic clearly. Ducks can move through fields eating insects and weeds while adding manure, turning pest control into part of the farm ecosystem. Modern integrated pest management follows a similar idea with newer tools: monitor conditions, use resistant varieties, encourage natural controls, and apply targeted interventions only when needed. The goal is productivity without turning the field into a fragile chemical dependency. Once rice is harvested, milling determines what kind of grain reaches the kitchen. Dry rice grain has outer layers that can be removed to different degrees. Brown rice keeps more of these layers, giving it a nuttier flavor, more fiber, and a longer cooking time. White rice has more of the outer material removed, which makes it softer, faster to cook, and easier to store, but also changes its nutritional profile. Some rice is parboiled, meaning it is partially cooked before final processing. This changes how the grain behaves, often making it easier to cook and less likely to break. These processing choices are not minor details. They shape shelf life, texture, flavor, nutrition, and the way rice fits into different cuisines and supply chains. Nutritionally, rice is mainly a source of carbohydrates. Cooked white rice contains a high share of carbohydrate, a small amount of protein, and minerals such as manganese. It contains no gluten, which makes it useful for people who cannot tolerate gluten-containing grains. But rice by itself is not a complete nutritional solution. Its protein does not provide all essential amino acids in ideal amounts, which is why traditional meals often pair rice with beans, lentils, fish, eggs, meat, vegetables, or fermented foods. The wider meal completes what the grain lacks. This also explains interest in varieties such as golden rice, which was genetically engineered to contain vitamin A precursors. When a population depends heavily on one staple, improving that staple can become a public health strategy, though also a source of debate. The reason rice can become so many different dishes is hidden in its starch. Rice contains amylose and amylopectin, two starch components that strongly influence texture. Long-grain rice, often from indica cultivars, tends to stay separate, dry, and fluffy after cooking. That makes it ideal for dishes where distinct grains matter. Aromatic types like basmati and jasmine add another layer, fragrance and flavor. Their nutty, floral, or popcorn-like aroma is not decoration, it shapes the identity of entire cuisines. A biryani, pilaf, or Thai curry meal feels different because the rice itself behaves differently. Texture is not just preference. It is chemistry, breeding, and cooking tradition meeting in one pot. Medium grain and short grain rice show the opposite side of rice chemistry. Medium grain rice tends to be moist, tender, and slightly sticky. Calrose helped establish the Californian rice industry, while carnaroli is prized in Italy because it can absorb liquid and release starch in a way that creates creamy risotto without collapsing completely. Short grain rice, often from japonica cultivars, is more oval and sticky. That stickiness is essential for sushi, where the rice must hold together while still feeling tender. Japanese varieties such as kashi hikari, hatsushimo, and sasanashiki reflect regional climates and preferences. Glutinous rice, despite its name, contains no gluten. It is named for its glue-like texture and is used in foods such as mochi. Rice also includes varieties that carry history and symbolism in their appearance. Black rice, for example, looks dark purple because it contains high levels of anthocyanins, the same broad family of pigments associated with many deeply colored plant foods. It is sometimes called forbidden rice because of the story that it was once reserved for royalty in ancient China. Whether in black rice, aromatic rice, sushi rice, or paella rice, variety matters because rice is never just one thing. Bomba rice used in paella absorbs flavorful liquid while holding its structure. Arborio and carnaroli behave differently in risotto. Each variety represents a solution to a culinary problem: absorb broth, stay fluffy, stick together, hold shape, or deliver aroma. For all its importance, rice has an environmental cost. Rice production was estimated to contribute more than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions in 2022. Flooded fields can create low oxygen conditions where methane-producing microbes thrive, and methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. But the issue is difficult because rice is not an optional luxury crop. It feeds billions and supports millions of farmers. Climate change also threatens rice production through heat, changing rainfall, floods, droughts, saltwater intrusion, and shifting pest pressures. The effects will not be the same everywhere. Some regions may adapt with infrastructure, improved varieties, and better water management. Others may be more vulnerable. The challenge is to reduce emissions while protecting the food security rice provides. Rice is easy to overlook precisely because it is so familiar. But that familiarity hides a vast story. It is an ancient domesticated grass, a global staple, a local political concern, a post-harvest logistics problem, a cooking science lesson, a cultural symbol, and a climate challenge. Its different forms explain why one grain can become fluffy basmati, fragrant jasmine rice, creamy risotto, sticky sushi, chewy mochi, or deeply colored black rice. Its supply chains show why storage and transport can matter as much as farming. Its environmental footprint shows why staple foods must be part of climate conversations. The next time rice appears on a plate, it is worth seeing more than a background ingredient. In that small grain is a record of human adaptation, taste, labor, and survival. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.